Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Woodburn Accountants and Advisors webinar series on your brand strategy for China. This was the #1 requested topic in 2020 in all the webinar series that I was doing. And I'm not a brand strategist, so I've brought on 4 additional speakers on this week's webinar series to give you the information and the education you need on developing a solid brand strategy for China. Yesterday, we were talking about brand protection and the importance of surrounding the fact that you have to register your trademarks. And today, I've got, actually, for the first time ever, an existing client of mine coming on and explaining to us about the importance of storytelling in branding and product design in China. So this is part 2, day 2 of our webinar series. Before we begin, and this is really for the benefit of Matt, so that he knows who is the audience for today. I know that some of you actually wrote this yesterday, who you were, but if you could rewrite it and let me know. Are you a newbie to China? Meaning that you found an opportunity and you're exploring the idea of China. You're trying to gain a certain level of education and understanding on how to create a strategy and how to protect your business. Or are you a startup in China? Have you been doing business in China for, I don't know, 1 to 3 years, transacting in China or having an entity in China, and you're so focused on the core aspects of your business, which might be just sales versus anything else? So you're on here today to learn more. Or are you an experienced China hand? So someone like me that's been in the market for over 10, 15, 20 years, and you're just trying to get fresh ideas from new experts that might be out there on the market. It would be fabulous if you guys interacted. Please do. These webinars are so much more fun when we do get interaction from you guys. So please do tell me who you are. And again, this is for the benefit of Matt. So Matt, just so you know, there's Dawn, who's a newbie. Louisa is a newbie. Lauren is a newbie. Ji Hong is a startup. And Ray is a startup. That's all the answers I've gotten. Andre's a newbie. Andre was there yesterday as well. Chris is a startup. So it looks like it's really a mix between newbies and startups right now. Garrett is a newbie, so maybe a little bit more newbies than startups. But that gives us a little bit of an understanding. I have a feeling the experienced China hands don't want to write anything. Patrick is a startup. Thank you, Pui. You're an experienced China hand. Appreciate it. So there's one. But it looks like there's a mixture of newbies and startups, Matt. So you're aware. Petrov is a startup. Thank you guys so much for interacting. Trust me, these webinars are so much more fun when people actually put details in, okay? And ask questions and comment. So let me explain to you how this all works. So Matt and I are on this to educate you. And sometimes we'll ask you guys questions. It's up to you whether you want to give us feedback or not, but we always appreciate the feedback. If you guys get questions or you have doubts or you have comments, put them into the question section of the control panel. There will be a Q&A, and trust me, the Q&A is the most fun out of any of these webinar sessions. Our promise to you is that we are going to be staying online till all the questions have been answered. If you can't stay on because of time, don't worry. We are recording today's session. It's going to be up on our YouTube channel by the end of the day, and you will get the recording. And if you had to leave prior to us answering your question, revert back to the recording and you will see that we would have answered it for you, okay? We want this to be a valuable spend of your time, so use it wisely. It is a complimentary webinar. We really are here to educate you. I am extremely excited myself to learn about what Matt does concretely and to hear all about storytelling and brand strategy and product design and whatnot. This is also something very new for me, so I'm sure some questions will be popping up on my end as well. So again, please be as interactive as possible. Now, on a technical note, I do not go to webinar. It is the platform I have chosen to host my webinars. And I understand that with everything happening in the world, we do get frustrated by technology, but please don't blame me. If you run into issues, I cannot help you at this point in time. So just know that there is a recording and you can revert back to the recording later on. My tip is, though, if you do run into difficulties, log out and reboot the system and come back in. That might work perfectly. As a technical point, Matt and I are on WeChat. So if either of us run into technical issues, we will be communicating via WeChat and we will be up. Usually, if we run into technical issues, we also will log out, we log back in, and it will take about 30 seconds to 1 minute for us to reboot. The promise is we're going to come back on and finish today's presentation, and as mentioned, the recording will be up on our YouTube channel. All right. Let me introduce you to the China experts for the week. So again, we are not using cameras today for the main reason that many of you are still working remotely and working from home. So you might not have the necessary bandwidth to have a stable line. So we're not using the cameras, but we did want to provide photos so you at least know what we look like. My name is Christina Kola-Kalucia. I'm the head of business advisory at Woodburn Accountants and Advisors, and I am your moderator for today. I'll be moderating the Q&A. I am one of the leading experts on inbound investment to China. I've been in the market for 17 years, based out of Shanghai, focused purely on corporate services and corporate compliance. And I've helped companies, foreign investors, with their market entry strategies, implementations, and the fun part of my job is really helping them with their growth strategies in the market and making sure that they do grow in the market and they grow at the rate they should be growing at. Which all leads to a methodology that I've created, which is the China Roadmap methodology, which I post a webinar on every single month. So if you're interested on signing up for that, it'll be posted on the 1st of Feb, or I believe around the 12th of Feb. I'll be doing that over Chinese New Year. So let me introduce you very briefly about this series. Again, I've got the experts on here because I'm certainly not one of them in terms of China branding and digital marketing and e-commerce and whatnot, but I've got Matt Wills on. He's going to speak today. Tomorrow, I've got Wendy, who is the digital marketing executive at Elriche and Chozun, and she's going to be talking about digital marketing. I've got Ariel, who's the BD manager at Ping Pong Digital, who's going to be talking about e-commerce trends. And then I've got Olivier Verreau from Marketing to China, who will be talking about budget. Now, I just had Olivier join in at the end of last week because budgeting is people do not know how much they have to spend when it comes to building up their brand in China. So Olivier, he's not marketed anywhere in the series, and I apologize for that, but he just jumped on last week. But if you guys want to have an understanding on budget, he's going to give you a summary of that on Friday in terms of all the various brand strategies you can create and what those budgets are. I do know Matt's going to be touching a little bit on that today. Or if not, I might be bringing it up in the Q&A, but just so you know, that will be popping up on Friday if that is a topic you're interested in. So do subscribe if you haven't yet. You can head to woodburnglobal.com/events and choose the webinars that would be of interest to you and register for them and come join us live. So now I'm going to turn it over to Matt. I'm done speaking for the day. I'll come back for the Q&A at the end. I'm going to give the controls to Matt now, and he will take over today's presentation. Matt, are you there?
I sure am. How clearly are you seeing me? All good?
All good, and the screen is up and running at the full size.
Fantastic. Okay. Thank you for coming, everybody. I'm Matt. I'm the founder and the creative director of Floob Creative, and let's talk today a little bit about how much a brand mascot can potentially benefit you in China, and then later about the value of storytelling and product design. So just a little bit about myself. I'm from Auckland, so if you were confused about the accent, I'm not Australian. I've got a degree in graphic design. I also have a BA and BSc, which is where I got my ideas from, I think. I used to live in Japan as a graphic designer and illustrator, and then I moved to China. I've been here for about 7 years. I originally started again as a graphic designer and illustrator, and then a year later I got my dream job at the time as a product designer working for a a licensee for Disney and Warner Brothers and Legendary and all of the big studios. So I was in the entertainment business. Shortly after that, I moved over to a Chinese company called Huayi Brothers, which is the biggest film conglomerate in China. And I was doing all of their consumer product designs and their IP development as well. I got poached from them after a couple of years to become the creative director for Darkwish Comics, which moved into China a little bit more than 3 years ago. So I specialize in IP development and consumer products, and I've just been kind of obsessed with cartoon characters all my life. Like since I was 7 years old, I was sitting there copying Odie from Garfield and Link from Zelda and all of that kind of stuff, and been creating characters ever since. So moving into having my own business now, doing that and then making like cool products around that, it's an even bigger dream come true. So our parent company is based in Hong Kong, and about mid last year we incorporated in Shanghai. We were lucky enough to find Christina, who helped us set up both companies, handle all of our accounting needs, and gave us advice all along the way. So a little bit about what we do. To differentiate ourselves from the hundreds of graphic design studios out there, I wanted to focus on my strengths and the experience that I got from the entertainment industry. And I pulled together a team of very talented Chinese and foreign illustrators, designers, and animators. And yeah, what we specialize in is character design and product design. We do offer graphic design as well, but what I'm going to be focusing on today is talking about character design and how it might be more relevant than you might expect, especially in the Chinese market. Then we'll move on to product design, which I think is a natural flow on from having a brand mascot. And regardless of whether or not you think that having a brand mascot is relevant to you, there will still be some insights in that section regarding how to design products, how to strategize a little bit, and yeah. So straight into character design. You might be from an industry that does not fall under the entertainment or media category, and you might be wondering what relevance does character design or having a brand mascot have for you. So let's talk about how that might be beneficial for you, again, especially in the Chinese market. So first of all, obviously, you want to stand out against the competition. The key feature of a brand mascot is having a memorable personality that changes how customers relate to your brand and how they interact with it. And often in China, that involves having a cartoonish kind of character that is relatable, recognizable, and memorable. Obviously, the reason for that is to create more of an emotional connection with your customers, and that character itself can become an influencer. Research is showing that having a character allows you to have more regular engagement with your customers. So as opposed to just going to a store, buying a product, going, cool, I like this. If it's apparel, maybe you wear it for a month and you're proud of it, but you have very little other interaction with the brand. Something that you can benefit from by having an actual character is that you can have this guy, or girl or thing coming on every week into their phones and going, hey, I'm still here. Look, I'm being funny, or I'm, you know. And then finally, the character itself can become a way to generate revenue, especially through licensing or creating your own line of consumer products. So on the international level, like you think of companies like Michelin, Mr. Clean, Kellogg's, KFC, Mr. Peanut, and all of these are pretty household names because they have very recognizable characters that distinguish them from their competition. These are three giants in China. So I imagine many of you have seen the 10-cent penguin. You may recognize the Meituan kangaroo, and then the Tmall cat, which is plastered just through every subway station, especially in Shanghai and Beijing. The cool thing that Meituan did, which was pretty clever, is that they designed these helmets, these kangaroo ear helmets, which they gave to all of their drivers. So if you're just walking through the streets of Shanghai, you see these guys zipping around, and it's just, you know, so unique. So I think one of the key differences between being in China and being in the West in terms of characters, or having characters as a brand mascot, is how much more ubiquitous they are here, and how much more acceptable they are to the adult cultural palate. So you might generally think of cartoon designs as being a little bit kiddish, a little bit childish, whereas I think in China, everybody just kind of grows up with being surrounded by all these kind of often very cute kind of characters, and associating those with certain brands. Even the government uses cartoons to make public announcements, and they recommend that television broadcasters give priority to animated series over live action series. There was a paper in 2016 called The Effective Brand Mascots on Consumers' Purchasing Behaviors. I can send you that link later if you'd like to see the paper itself. But what they found was that having brand mascots significantly increase a customer's willingness to purchase products, to create a more positive attitude toward the products, and to heighten the possibility of purchase. They also found that while most celebrity endorsers contributed to about 3.2% of a brand's buzz, so this is, you know, Instagram models or just influencers in general, brand mascots ranks much higher. For example, the Pillsbury Doughboy contributed to 22.14% of their brand buzz, according to one study at least. So I think one interesting example in China is B-Duck. So this began as a company that was just selling waterproof radios, but people liked the design of the character itself so much that it now has a very successful line of products just based around their character, including fashion apparel lines and a large number of licensed products. In the background of this slide, you can see the giant inflatable that they had at the China licensing show. So I just want to talk a little bit about the process of character design with a couple of examples. So obviously, first, after we get the creative brief, we start sketching out ideas for what kind of mascot is going to be appropriate for a particular brand. They typically fall into three categories: so humanoid characters, animals and plants and objects. Obviously, it's our job to find the right kind of mascot with the right personality and the right backstory that relates to the company that it represents and the kind of message that they want to send. So we might start with dozens of ideas and then selectively filter them down to the top kind of 3 or 4 before moving on to refining the exact look and personality that we're after. And this is obviously a back and forth process with the client. So this was for Krispy Kreme donuts. We gave them 3 initial concepts. As you might guess, they like the middle one the most because I think it's the most unique, and it's also related to the actual product. It's not necessarily always the case that you want to have a mascot that's physically close to the type of product that you're selling. For example, we did a pitch for Notizie Italia, the high-end furniture brand, and they specifically wanted a rabbit mascot because of the cultural resonance that has in China and how that reflects the brand personality that they were trying to sort of, I don't know if generate is the right word, but at least enhance. Also, the word rabbit in Chinese characters related to the Chinese name that they had as well. So this was the second stage of design. After we'd figured out, okay, this is the general character concept direction that we're going. So it was time to experiment with different costumes, different colors, expressions. As is often the case, we were looking at not necessarily only developing a single character, but a whole family of characters that can be part of a wider storytelling universe. So this is the final design, along with the auxiliary characters in the family as well, each one representing different products. Often brands will ask for a family of characters if that's within your project scope and within your project budget. You may, however, want to start with a single main character, and then as that character's popularity grows, you can expand your universe and then add to the kind of stories that you can tell, as well as being able to develop storylines where the characters interact. These designs themselves were initially for a 90-second animated video, and then they followed up with 10-second mini commercials. So these are some character designs in about the middle stages of development that we did for Louis Vuitton, who wanted to make a series of animated GIFs. We're going to get into WeChat stickers later on, which was the main purpose of these. They wanted to use their iconic flower pattern as the basis of the character. And here you can see that we're experimenting with different physical characteristics and color options. So after we figured out the sort of general look and feel and decided, you know, based on the last slide, what kind of characteristics, basic characteristics that the characters should have, it was time to think about what kind of actions we would show the character doing. So this is a really crucial step, regardless of whether you're planning to animate your character or not, because this is where we add the storytelling, the personality, and the emotion to the character. And it really starts to build the fantasy world inside the message that the brand is sending to its customers and connecting with them in doing so. So here are 10 of the finalized 16 total animated stickers that we ended up making for them. We ended up going with 2 final characters. And yeah, WeChat stickers are so universal in China. They're a perfect way of introducing your character. And so it's a natural kind of first step to create Yeah, 16 to 24 those are the two options that WeChat gives you to add to your WeChat brand account. We'll often begin with a relatively general set like this one, where you've got fairly standard kind of images and expressions saying thank you, good night, jiao, which means like do your best or good luck. And then later on, in order to keep your characters fresh and relevant and to give your customers new content, you can create seasonal or product specific WeChat sticker sets as well. Here's an example of some comic style characters that we created for Mr. and Mrs Bund, which is a fairly upscale restaurant along the riverside in Shanghai. We used these characters to create a series of digital comics for promotion on WeChat and Weibo mostly. As you've seen from the previous characters that I've shown so far, most of them are quite cute, which again is quite common in China. But the end purpose and the brand tone for these characters was different. So in this case, it made more sense to go with a more detailed and lifelike illustrated approach. Even if you have an existing character, sometimes it makes sense to adapt it to the local market. So when I was at Darkwish, I wanted to find a way to make the Hellboy character, which is our most popular character, more accessible to a wider Chinese audience. The original character art is very dark and uses a lot of non-uniform shapes, so it appeals more to the kind of die-hard original comic and movie fans. So we developed what I called Hellboy Q in order to broaden the appeal of the character to a younger age bracket and increase our female fan base. It also gave us a lot more flexibility as to what we could do with the character and the kinds of products that we could make by ourselves or license to other brands as well, as opposed to being trapped within the confines of the original art by Mike Mignola. So I think a lot of you have probably dealt with logo guides, brand guides, visual identity guides. I'm using those terms somewhat interchangeably there, but maybe some of you have not heard of style guides before. So the key difference is that a style guide doesn't just tell you how to use the art correctly, but it provides a library of creative assets to use. And it can be as long as 200 pages. I used to work with Marvel style guides that were, like 170 pages, one of them, 220 pages, another one. A typical brand guide or logo guide will probably be a single document that might be up to about 20 pages long. And that's just sort of saying, you know, these are our brand colors. This is how you use our logo. With a style guide, you're going to get hundreds of megabytes or even gigabytes of high resolution art to work with as well. The main purpose of style guides is to ensure brand consistency and to provide marketers, licensees, designers with pre-approved artwork. So just a quick rundown of the kind of things that you're going to find in a style guide. Just like a logo guide, you'll have obviously the logos themselves. What I would add is that if you create a character, you probably want to have a logo specific to that character as well. Obviously, color guide and fonts. If you have an idea for the kinds of things that you want your character to be saying or to be setting the personality tone for anything that's going to appear in speech bubbles or whatever, you might want to include verbiage and key phrases. This is something that we would sort of figure out at the ideation stage, where we're thinking about like the character's backstory, the character's environment, and obviously the character's personality. You'll want to have plenty of character poses. Those can be color, black and white. They can be usually they are vector art, which is made with Adobe Illustrator, so that can be blown up to any size. If it's more detailed art, we might do it in Photoshop, so you'll have raster art. You might want pure line art, as you'll see soon with Hellboy Q. If you have a family, then you will probably have poses where you're showing the characters interacting as well. And then again, if you have a family, you'll want a character size chart that guarantees that designers are going to display the characters in the correct proportions relative to one another. A full style guide, again, will also have patterns, borders, and icons. And these are sort of auxiliary elements that you can use to create backgrounds, to create consistent product sets, great for apparel. And then also more complicated graphic designs and badges where you, which is above and beyond just having the poses. It's showing the character probably with a background or interacting in a certain situation. It might have more designy kind of aspects. You'll see what I mean shortly. Do's and don'ts, how you can and cannot use the characters, and then finally product applications and a legal page, which will have your legal line, your trademark information, and your terms of usage for the style guide. So here's an example of the Hellboy Q style guide. So you can see we've got do's and don'ts with regard to how you can use the line art, how you use the shadows and the highlights, the kind of backgrounds and other graphic elements you should not combine with the original art, because that takes away from the branding. You've got the poses, and then kind of the middle and bottom middle things, pages. You can see the badges that I was talking about before, where we're getting into a little bit more of a designy sort of feel. Finally, there's a basic packaging guide that we put in there as well. You might have more than one particular demographic that you're trying to target. So style guides can often have different stylistic sections. So with this one, we've got your relatively basic comic pop section. We've got a more modern stylized look using the halftone effect. And then we've got like a super cute section for younger audiences as well. And then you apply those different styles throughout your badges, throughout your patterns, throughout your icons, and then each section is broken down in terms of style. I'll quickly show a couple of other style guides that I've worked on, and you'll see from the images that regardless of the type of character that it is, many of them contain pretty much exactly the same sets of creative assets. This is a relatively new IP that's being developed by Darkwish at the moment, which I think has a great premise for storytelling. Excuse me. The premise is monsters are real. When the lights go out, monsters come out and they start menacing children. So enter the Secret Order of the Teddy Bears, which is an organization of badass quasi-military teddies who come alive to fight for and protect children. So we began with just 2 characters from the initial comic, which was the starting point for the idea for this IP. And then we expanded our roster of characters to create a set of bears, all with different shapes, sizes, colors, personalities, cultural backgrounds, and skills. So there were 10 in total. This is my own IP that I developed specifically for the Chinese market and is owned by my company. I recognized the hole in the Chinese IP market, where I realized that there were very few IPs that were based around the theme of young love. So I used this concept that I got from Thai kissing fish and created these two characters, Kiss and Bobo. And we started making animated videos, which I'm happy to say got 25,000 fans on TikTok in the first 3 months. And we got our first FMCG licensee after 4 months. So the style guide was the basis for the animations. That it guided how the animators posed the characters. It set the color tone for the backgrounds, and it gave the artist the initial designs from which to work from. So those style guides that I've shown so far are pretty big, and I would call them general style guides. They tend to have a lot of creative assets. But as your designers go on and you create more and more assets, a lot of brands will continue to release updated style guides, including seasonal guides. In the case of brands that have a heavy apparel focus, they'll make like winter, spring, autumn, summer fashion season guides. This is an example of the super popular Line Friends IP, just showing some seasonal assets that they had from their Chinese New Year and Halloween style guides. So let's just move on to a few marketing applications for how we use characters and style guides in everyday use. So first and foremost, a character, a brand mascot, is your brand ambassador. So you'll want to have it on a significant portion, possibly all of your marketing materials. I'm going to focus on 3 less obvious marketing tactics that are used more in China than in the West. And the first one that I touched on before is WeChat stickers, which again, I think is the most direct way to get your character out onto the Chinese market. So there are 1.2 billion monthly users of WeChat, and people pepper in stickers into their text chats between friends all the time to add more humor and emotion. We have that in the West as well. It's just so common here. There are large public WeChat groups that are dedicated simply to sharing fun new stickers. A crucial point here is that you want to upload your sticker set to your official WeChat account so that it's linked to your brand. So people download the stickers and they download the entire set, which then appears as a mini icon within the chat entry box. And then, yeah, people are able to access it immediately without having to search through their stickers anytime they want. They have an indirect but a powerful impact on consumer engagement, which takes the relationship from just, as I hinted at before, beyond the transactional nature of purchasing and expanding that relationship. So when people download your WeChat sticker set, they're going to be prompted to follow your official WeChat account. And then every week you can push offers, specials, links, news, keeping your brand fresh and continuous in your customers' minds. You can also upload those same animations to Giphy and iMessage for your international marketing efforts too. These are here just a few examples of some of the stickers that we created. The average time to generate to animate a sticker set and develop it is about a month. Okay, on the left, almost all companies in China release seasonal greeting posters for Chinese New Year, the Dragon Boat Festival, Mid-Autumn Festival, National Day, and also for Western holidays too, even Easter. What I would say is that the majority of these kind of posters that you see, they tend to be quite simple text-based posters with a logo just saying, you know, 新年快乐, Happy New Year's. And they are almost certainly unlikely to be shared outside of a company's inner circle, which I think is a perfect opportunity if you have a brand mascot to add a little bit more spice and personality to your company. You show your brand mascot dressed up for that occasion. You know, increase your visibility, add to your storytelling. On the right-hand side, these are giveaway wallpapers. So Chinese customers really love, you know, getting free stuff from brands that they love, especially if the design is cool. And so it makes sense on your social media pushes on WeChat and Weibo to offer like free downloadable wallpapers for iPhones and Android. One small note about that is you'll need two different dimension formats, as iPhone and Android have slightly different resolutions. Another way to put your mascot to work is by having weekly WeChat and Weibo pushes with digital comics. So these can show your character interacting with a new product line that you're launching, or they can just be funny moments to sort of build the personality of your brand and your mascot. In this case, we see the Arctic fox mascot of Zhihu. Zhihu is the Chinese version of Quora.com, and pretty ubiquitously used. And these were used to promote some of their seasonal products, as you can see on the left, and then in the middle on the right, you can see just some comics that were sort of peppered into their social media posts to tell a funny Christmas story. So moving on to product design. For me, this is a natural extension of character design, especially insofar as we're talking about merchandise or licensed products. But again, even if you don't have a brand character, there will be some principles in here that I hope will be relevant to you anyway, in terms of design and product strategy. So what makes a product great? Well, obviously the first thing that catches somebody's eye is how a product looks and how it's presented. It goes without saying that you should have world-class product photos that are well lit and color toned in the right way. But the physical product itself needs to get people to say, that's cool, wow. However, if it's way overpriced or if it's just not functional, they're not going to buy it. So it needs to be practical. I've already used the word storytelling a couple of times in this presentation. I'm really going to double down on it in this section, especially for IP-related products. So I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and I would say that of any IP that I can think of, they have the coolest storytelling products of any IP. They have had the advantage of being around for like nearly 50 years now. Wait, 40 years, sorry. But what true Star Wars fan wouldn't love any of these? The key feature is that they've used the nature and the shape of the original, relatively mundane, undecorated product and combined it with a design that recreates some of the most iconic moments from the movie. I can't take any credit for these designs except for the Stormtrooper hoodie in the middle, which is actually one of the designs that landed me that first product design job. These are a few more kind of illustrations of storytelling and designs that I've done for various other IPs. So on the left, you've got Game of Thrones. We released, we created these designs just at the end of season 7 when there was the Ice Dragon. So yeah, we're playing around with a dragon heavy focus. And if you look at the lighter, for example, you literally have a fire-breathing dragon in your pocket. With the Batman versus Superman ones, obviously, we've replaced the Batman logo with the Apple logo. The watch design, Superman is literally chasing Batman around the city of Gotham. The glass design, we're doing kind of a superhero identity reveal. On the top right, that's actually an iPad case, and this was before iPads had the magnetic Apple Pencil. So what I wanted to do there was use Batman's utility belt as a way of basically making sure that people don't lose their Apple Pencil. So it's not kept loose in their bag from or getting damaged while it's in their bag, while it's separate from it. And then finally on the bottom right, you've got Scrap from the Ice Age series, that the poor little bugger who's always trying to get the acorn, just trapped in ice as always. Here's a few more that I did for Captain America 3. I won't explain, I won't go through each of these. For me, the most storytelling one is the fan in the middle. You've got the Captain America shield, which appears as his shield when you turn the fan on. So it's using a feature of the product to integrate it with the art and the story that you're telling. On the bottom right, you have a visually consistent set of auto accessories, and that's something that I'm going to get into a little bit more detail shortly. If you come across a really killer storytelling principle, you should try to replicate it, in your other products. These are some of the products that I designed for my own IP, and what we thought was a great idea was to use this concept of magnetism between these two fish that are in love. So those two big pillows that come as a set, they've got fairly strong magnets in the lips. So when you put the two pillows together, they go click and they kiss. We reused the idea for our mini plush, and at the moment we're seeing if we can figure out a way to make it work for some foil balloons for a Valentine's Day crossover promotion with a flower retailer. It's important to have a price point range within your product. So the system that I was taught by my mentor was good, better, great. The so-called halo products, being the great ones, those are the ones that really capture your consumer's attention. They're unlikely to have large sales volumes because they will tend to be on the more expensive side. And the good and the better level products are more likely to be within consumers' budgets. I would say that even at the good level of products, we want to have storytelling wherever possible and avoid what I call a logo slap. That's where you're just getting the company logo and kind of indiscriminately slapping it onto a bunch of different products, and hoping to add value to those products, which, unless you're Nike or a luxury brand, you're going to be unlikely to be able to get away with. So I think that something that a lot of junior product designers overlook is how each of their singular product designs are going to look when they're put all together on a retail shelf or within an e-commerce platform. There needs to be a consistency in the color and the packaging, and this should guide your visual merchandising. If the overall gestalt, like the overall kind of look and feel of your products when they're put together, if it's mixed up and incongruent, I think that consumers feel that the brand is quite amateurish, and you'll also lose a lot of your brand messaging as well. So in the sets that I designed here, I deliberately designed products that would match others, and I threw out the designs where there weren't enough products to create a set. Obviously, the apparel market is huge. It's the #1 product category on Taobao and Tmall. So it's an easy choice especially for IP-related merchandise. MOQs can be relatively low, so that's good for testing the market. And if you're like really starting out, there are a lot of print-on-demand suppliers that you can use. So for those of you that don't know print-on-demand, there is zero inventory risk. You just upload your designs to a set of preset products that you can choose from. They will print those out as they are ordered on the website. So it's a great way of testing the market. The only drawback is that the particular types of products that are available is limited, and the amount of design freedom that you have is limited as well. So you're less able to get those really kind of unique storytelling kind of designs that I think we saw on some of the previous products. If your brand has enough clout, if you have just awesome designers and great graphics, you can create your own fashion line as well, which we did at Darkwish. Really just playing around with the logo to make a line of street apparel. One last point on product design. Something that's important to make sure that the samples that you get back from the factory are the same as your concepts are, is making sure that your product designers give manufacturers all the information that they need and as precise directions as possible. So there's a lot of variation in competence between different manufacturers. If you're lucky to be working with a factory that knows exactly how to translate your vision into reality, that's great. But it's easier to save time and hassle by telling them exactly which materials to use, the Pantone colors that you want, the manufacturing processes that are best, making sure that they have high resolution graphics, and then packaging all of that information into a single file that's easy to understand and easy to access. This is where it pays to have an experienced product person on your team who's visited plenty of factories and understands manufacturing processes. So they say that a product is only as good as its packaging. Ideally, you would have product designers that are also great graphic designers, or even if you're lucky enough to have a team large enough to afford a packaging specialist, then all the power to you. I'll cover this section very briefly, just with a couple of examples of IPs that we've already looked at. So Hellboy Q again. This design did not take us so long to make. We had a pretty clear idea of the visual language that we wanted for the character. And again, as you can see here, we gave very precise directions to licensees and designers and factories as to how to recreate this design. You know, even if you're using a different shape or a different type of packaging. Again, it's important to make sure that your products look good together. So to have a packaging guide, I think, makes a lot of sense. This might be a separate service that you employ an outside design agency to help you with, but it really can be a science unto itself, and can take quite a lot of research. My team recently spent 2 months designing a single package for a single SKU that took 21 different iterations and several trips back to the drawing board. I think this is a pretty good example that sets the right tone for this IP. I think it appeals to both boys and girls because of the color tone and because of the camouflage pattern that conveys the idea of kind of a cute army. We've got a nice, simple, clear logo, and you know, we haven't overloaded it with graphics. We didn't use all 10 characters on a packaging. We just kept it to the main 2. Now, I think there's some value in thinking about using storytelling when it comes to your packaging design as well. My favorite example here is the lightsaber power bank. So this is a phone charging power bank that you can, cart around with you. It has like 3 LEDs on the front that glow red if you press the lightsaber button. But this is not a product feature that's immediately obvious. So we created a box design that opens up in a way to look like a real lightsaber, and I think it really adds value just to the product itself. The lines are a little bit blurred here between product design and packaging, but again, what makes these things unique is the storytelling. So the design on the left was for Hawaii Brothers Cinema Chain. So it's a 2-in-1 popcorn and drink holder that they sold at the concession stand in the shape of a movie camera. On the right, this is a hongbao, which is like an envelope that you give to people during Chinese New Year's, as you probably know. And this was part of a corporate gift box set that Hawaii was giving out to its corporate customers and corporate partners to maintain those relationships. The interesting thing about it is that it's designed in the shape of the Qing Dynasty Chinese movie character, Detective D, who in that year was the #1 movie that they were trying to promote. So finally, I'll just go over the steps that I think that you should follow if you're interested in creating a mascot for your brand, or just making sure that your product design is on track. So after you decide on a character that sets the right tone for your brand, you'll want to flesh it out and give it some real personality with some starting pose illustration. If you're planning to make an animated WeChat sticker set, you can start planning for that right at this stage. Ideally, your character itself will have a recognizable and unique logo, so it makes sense to have a fairly basic VI guide for that, for the usage of that as well. After that, you'll immediately want to copyright and trademark the character to fully protect it against pirates. Copywriting is pretty simple, cheap, and fast, but trademarks take, I think, on average about 9 months to register in China, and can be quite, well, significantly more expensive than copywriting. I know that Christina offers these services. She did a webinar on it yesterday. She's the perfect person to talk to about that. Okay, so one other point about trademarking, is that you'll want to know which product categories that you're likely to need. That's a way of cutting down on costs to begin with, and already figuring out your product strategy. You might want a 3D version of your character, and again, if you want more than just the basic standing pose, this is something that you can also plan for at the 2D stage. If you're going to be using a 3D character for animations, then you'll need to rig the limbs and the face for movement, which can add to, depending on the level of detail, quite a bit more expenditure, unless you have a relatively simple character. It depends on whether or not that's what your plan is, and whether or not that's in your budget. If you're planning to use the character extensively, for example, licensing it, making a whole product line, then I think it's worth considering making a full style guide. You don't need to make a full style guide necessarily at the beginning if you're just trying to experiment with a brand mascot. But if you really are planning on taking it further, then I think that's when you'll want to think about creating a full style guide. As I said, I strongly recommend making an animated WeChat sticker set. presuming that that is also within your budget. And you'll want a good illustrator on your design or your marketing team to help with creating the marketing materials. For the products, first figure out your product strategy. What kind of products do you need? Where are you going to sell them? How are you going to sell them? Then you can create a list of products that you need concepts for. And again, remember to make sure that they all work together as a set as they're being designed. After you have at least, I would say, a second round of product concept evaluation and elimination, then you can start sourcing factories for each of the products. Once you've decided which products you want to move into production with, again, double check that you're sending everything that the factory needs. Here's a relatively rough and conservative timeline for all of those processes. If somebody will want to both create a character and move straight into product development. In my experience, if I've got really good communication with the client and it's super clear, or when they know exactly what they want, I think it's possible to shrink this timeline. But I just prefer to err on the side of caution, especially when there can be several more rounds of revision than you might expect. The product manufacture time is totally product dependent. It can go from a week for example, simple stationery products to up to 6 months for highly complex, 3D figures or sculptures. So, thank you for listening, everybody. I hope that hasn't been too overwhelming, and I hope that I've given you some helpful ideas. For those of you that are interested in reading a little bit further about the value of having a brand mascot, I've had an article published on the British Chamber of Commerce on their online magazine, which summarizes some of the main points that I've covered today. You can find it on their website Focus, just by searching for Floob, or alternatively, you can contact me directly and I'll send you a PDF. So for that or for any other reason, I welcome you to email me at hello@floobcreative.com. If you're already on WeChat, please go ahead and add me by scanning the QR code. Find me on my website, on LinkedIn, or Christina can connect us. Thanks again, everybody.
Thanks, Matt.
Christina.
Appreciate it. So guys, I just wanted to understand before we start the Q&A, what was your biggest takeaway from Matt's presentation today? Please do just jot that in. It's always helpful for Matt to know what you've learned and what you can get out of what you got out of the presentation, basically. I'm just going to do a quick poll time also, because this will also help Matt. If you guys would like to learn more about brand storytelling, just type it in the poll, yes or no. This will give us an understanding of what people are looking for and whether it is something that's interesting for them. I'm going to give it a couple of seconds more. I'm going to do a countdown. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. So there was 89% of you that said yes, 11% of you that said no, and I'm guessing that 11% are the folks that are more B2B oriented. So there has been a question that's been posted about that, and I will get on to that for Matt as well, but it's great to see that people are interested in the topic. Guys, don't forget, in the chat section, there are plenty of ways to reach out to Matt and I. You can just contact him directly or via me, however you would like. So let's get cracking on the Q&A. So the first question that's popped in, Matt, was from Sarah, who said, how do the mascots work for B2B companies rather than for companies that sell consumer goods?
Good question. I think that a mascot can still help your business stand out over the others by giving it a little bit more personality, something that is relatable and recognizable, even just to other businesses. I mean, other business owners are people too, that have their own kind of emotional responses when they see companies. And then secondarily, I would add, if you're in the consumer products business, and especially if you're doing licensing, then obviously you have that ability to license the mascot itself.
Let me just add a couple of cents after everything that I've learned from Matt today. I think for those of you that are in the B2B sector, most business negotiations are done via WeChat nowadays. Perhaps proposals are sent by email, but the actual discussions are done via WeChat. And if you create a mascot and then followed by WeChat stickers, and you're promoting that, that's an emotional tag that the other person will have on you because they'll enjoy it. I went through Matt's presentation, and my first thought as a Westerner was that these really look childish. I wasn't attracted to many of the stickers. I wasn't attracted to many of them, but that's not who you are targeting. You are targeting the Chinese market and Chinese individuals who are attracted to these childish characters, right? It brings, as Matt was mentioning this, it brings an emotional tie. So I think if you are building content to promote your business through Weibo, WeChat, or even just through personal discussions and negotiations, bringing in these mascots one-to-one, I think is a really interesting concept. And I don't want to say it's going to close a deal, but I think it's something that will bring the emotional attachment. Matt, would you have anything else to add?
I would, yeah. I think that given that B2B relationship is a little bit more serious, I take your point that the sort of super cartoony kind of designs might not necessarily be appropriate for a B2B business, depending on what it does. Your point about in China, that kind of design is a lot more sort of culturally acceptable, and adults will respond to it just as much as children will. You can still, if you want to have a more kind of serious brand personality, just have a more serious looking mascot, which I think the Mr. and Mrs. Bund digital comics were a pretty good example of.
Right. And don't forget also that if you are in the B2B sector, I mean, at Woodburn, we don't do this, but I do know that a lot of my competitors do this, is that they create auxiliary material to either give away as gifts, which has, my competitors don't have mascots, I haven't seen anybody have them, but they do create, for example, calendars, pens, shirts, notepads with their logos and designs on them. That even, for me, I find it an interesting concept to create a mascot and to send out those gifts to clients and whatnot in the future. So that's another way you can perceive the mascots and create that storytelling as well.
Totally.
Matt? Go ahead, Matt.
Sorry, I was just going to say, on those corporate gift box sets, again, like the festival posters that a lot of brands send out, that, as I said before, can be a little bit kind of boring and they're not likely to be shared outside of the company. The corporate gift box sets, they can be somewhat generic as well. So again, I would avoid the logo slapping as much as you can. And if you can do something clever with the design where you're playing with the features of the product, that storytelling doesn't even need to come from a character. It can just be in the cleverness of your product design, as opposed to just, here's a pen, it's got my logo on it, if you know what I mean.
Right. Joe had a really interesting question, which she says, I'd be really interested to hear if Matt feels any mascots have not connected well with a Chinese audience, and which one would be the one that he thinks has landed the best.
Wow. Okay, that's an excellent question. There are just so many mascots out there. There are just the Chinese market. It's kind of the standard to almost for a lot of companies to have a brand mascot, and for me to think of all of the ones out there. I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. I'm sorry, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I mean, there were the big three that I showed for those, you know, the Chinese giants earlier on in the presentation up here. I mean, these ones are all super successful. In terms of ones that have really petered out and failed, I would imagine there would be a fair few, and I would imagine that the reason that they haven't worked is because of bad design, or because the mascot that they came up with did not add value to the brand image that they were trying to present.
So I actually just want to bring in a case study of a company that I've been speaking to over a period of time. And I'd love your opinion, Matt, on whether you have your brands doing this as well. So I was in touch with a consumer brand that produces a food item, and they actually did a focus group in China. And the outcome of that focus group was that the product itself is fabulous. The food item itself is fantastic, but that the packaging was horrible to the point that it wouldn't entice somebody to take it off the shelf. So they went back to the drawing board to actually create a packaging design that is specific for the Chinese market. In your case, Matt, are you involved at all in focus groups or getting feedback from the consumers themselves in regards to designs that you create?
I have been. That will typically fall under the umbrella of responsibility for the company itself. I'm sure that I can help them arrange that. But yeah, generally speaking, I'll create the design. They will then show it to their own target groups, and then they'll give me that feedback and say, sorry, their design's not working, or that they love this aspect, they didn't like this aspect so much. Again, the science of packaging is something that needs to be paid a lot of attention to, even regardless of whether or not you have a mascot.
Right. All right, so there's another question from Patrick, which is, would a serious brand, for example, McKinsey or Accenture, so I guess those are more service, high-end service-oriented companies, benefit from a character in China?
I think that's a good question. It would depend more on how much kind of B2B and B2C balance that's involved there. Again, for like really serious companies like a law firm, or even yourself, like, you know, you guys don't have a brand mascot and you might not necessarily benefit from it. For
Right.
those kinds of companies in general, I would say not necessarily. But especially for consumer products, and especially like FMCG or fashion kind of related companies, then that's where a brand mascot can really help you out, I think. That doesn't mean to say that they can't necessarily benefit from it. I'm just saying the value proposition is not as high.
I think for companies like McKinsey or Accenture, as well as for somebody like us, Woodburn, we're much smaller than those organizations. I liked the idea that Matt provided, which is if you are doing gift giving to your clients, so, and you're putting the logo, doing more with that product design, so that really the client who's getting it is reminded of McKinsey or Accenture or Woodburn or whomever, I think that plays a bigger role than if it's just a mascot that you're promoting through WeChat stickers or whatever it might be.
Yes, exactly. I think with those kind of companies, it's more about beefing up your graphic design and putting more effort into that, rather than just going, hey, a cartoon character is going to help me. Maybe not. Maybe you just need to improve your level of VI design.
So there's another question from Dawn, which is, do you need to think about colors for characters for cultural purposes?
Yes, to a certain degree. It depends on the character itself, and how the color is going to interact with that character. I wouldn't say that there are any like big no colors, but at the same point, I would say that it really depends on the context. So, for example, I remember a few years ago, there was a Singaporean company that did some hongbaos for Chinese New Year, and they made them blue. And 99% of hongbaos are always red and gold and yellow for Chinese New Year.
99.9% of them are red, gold, or yellow.
Yeah, but these guys did some hongbaos that were blue, which was pretty daring. That really set them apart in terms of, wow, okay, here's a company that's not afraid to play with the status quo, and the design was beautiful. I mean, if they did a really ugly blue design, then that's going to be just a fail. But they had a beautiful packaging design that just makes you go, all right, these guys are pretty innovative.
Right. So I have 2 more questions, and these are 2 questions that actually Matt and I came up with that I do want to highlight, particularly the first one, because I think this pertains to everybody nowadays in terms of budgeting. So Matt, the question I think that maybe some people are too shy to ask is really around budget. If you've got a limiting budget to create a mascot or to think about product design or product image or just brand image, how do you focus in order to be able to optimize in China?
Sure. So I would start with a mini style guide, which consists of the basic character design, a turnaround that shows 4 different views, so that front, back, side, and then what we call a 3/4 view, so it's sort of slightly off to the side. I would say 8 to 10 poses, so showing that character and expressing its personality, a character logo, and then maybe 4 to 6 badges or graphic designs. I think that's a good start for your marketing and design teams. And then I'd quickly move into making a WeChat sticker set. I mentioned before that the WeChat sticker set can be somewhat expensive. My main animator works in a very detailed way, so the sticker set can be a little bit costly. But we can always find a more simplified and cheaper solution that uses fewer frames and has a shorter turnaround time. But those would be, I think, the starting elements that you would want.
And then Matt, I think another question which we hadn't discussed before, but I think it's interesting because of all the questions that came in the registration list, which was all around actual marketing. So just to highlight, Matt is a storyteller. He deals with product design, mascot development, etc. But when you've created your mascot, Matt, how do you use it in the marketing world, right? I mean, we're talking about the WeChat stickers, so that's one channel, but where does that take you basically once that mascot's created?
So as I think I said in the other marketing sections, which were quite brief, I think that you want to put that character on as much of your marketing collateral as you can, and make it as visible as possible. Put it into your advertisements, potentially animate it, and then and then also do the wallpapers and the so what was the other thing? I've forgotten.
But so in the end, you're actually creating that. I mean, in the end, you're creating that for your content, right? So all the content marketing that you're going to be doing, that mascot is going to be visible everywhere, and it's going to be the reminder that that is associated with your company.
Yes, exactly. And again, you're using that character as a brand ambassador, as a spokesperson for your company, and he, she, it is, doing fun things in accordance with the kind of personality that you're trying to project your company to have.
Right. So it's a very different type of content building, ultimately, in China, because you're using that mascot to promote your brand, what you do, versus creating articles or creating video. Video content. You're using that as part of your content collateral, which might be a little bit different compared to the West.
Absolutely. It's adding more emotion to even content that you might already have. So you can right. have your product, you can have your product release, you can have your articles or whatever, and then you put this character in there, and he's sort of like your guide along the way through the content, and he's adding right. more fun to it, and again, creating more of an emotional connection.
Right. Okay. Super. Well, those are the questions that have popped in. Matt and I are going to stick around for a couple more minutes. So if there are any other questions that people want to raise, Mustafa, thank you so much for your feedback on your takeaway. So Matt, just so you know, Mustafa was saying, creating a mascot is a brilliant idea. I have always thought that a brand name with its characteristics will be enough. However, Matt's presentation helped me change my mind. A mascot in the service sector and on B2B business will also have a positive impact on your counterpart. So that was one big takeaway.
Mustafa. Thank you.
So guys, again, we're going to hang around for another 5 minutes or so. So if you do have any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. And don't forget, we've got 3 more sessions this week. We've got Wendy tomorrow about digital marketing. We've got Ariel on Thursday about e-commerce. And we've got Olivier on Friday. He's going to be talking about budgeting and all aspects around marketing. So definitely reach out. And for those of you that wanted to learn more about storytelling and wanted to learn more about product design, please don't hesitate to reach out to Matt. In the chat section of the control panel are all of our details. I'm also happy to introduce Matt to you guys. So don't hesitate to connect. All right, I'm going to quit the recording, and I hope to see you guys for the rest of the sessions this week. Take care and goodbye.
Thanks, everybody.